Should I go to physical therapy school or not? Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Max Wardell, and we're talking about whether we should go to physical therapy school or not. I went to physical therapy school at a school kind of in my area, Oakland University, and I think that I got a great amount of orthopedics that was really in depth, and I really appreciated the orthopedic curriculum, biomechanics that we got there. Some really great instructors in those domains. The question is, should I go to physical therapy school? Is it worth it? And my answer to guys is it depends. People hate to hear that answer, and that's the answer that we get all the time in PT school. The question is not whether I should go to PT school, but it's what do I want to do? What is it that I want to do, and where do I see myself? And not some nebulous answer, but something specific. If you see yourself doing manual therapy and prescribing exercise and working with guys in a clinical setting, working with athletes in the clinical setting, physical therapy school may be the option for you. I also say, all right, I'm going to do a collection of different things, or I'm going to go to chiropractic school. You got to understand how things are reimbursed and what gives you the greatest scope. If I want to work on the biomechanics of the throw, I can certainly do that with a physical therapy education, but I'm going to have to do some education of my own, which is what I did. I got to study under Ed Martell, and I've taken various courses and done different various educational pursuits on my own. And I'll continue to do educational stuff, and that's lifelong learning and those sorts of things. But when it comes to physical therapy school, there's a few things that one has to understand. The first thing is it takes a heck of a lot of time. It takes an extraordinary amount of time out of your schedule. You're talking about sitting in class for hours on end. 40 hours a week is about what we spent during physical therapy school for the majority of the time. Now, there were certain times where you had like a half day on Fridays, or there was one semester where we had like Tuesday off. So we were like Monday for 9 hours, Tuesday was off, Wednesday 9 hours, Thursday was 8, and Friday was 8 hours. And then there's always the study time. That's not including the study time. And I would say this is fairly typical. Some schools have a little bit less. I would say the school I went to had a little bit more than the average, but also looking at schools and the duration of schools. What I would advise people to do if they're looking at PT school is, first of all, consider that the majority of learning you're going to do it independently on your own. The first thing that you want to look at in a school, from my perspective, is the length of time that you're going to be in PT school. The convenience of getting to the location. How much time are you going to be able to spend doing other things? Is it a hybrid program where you can go online and in person? Maybe a good option. And then, how are the school dynamics? You always want to assess that. Talk to people who are in the program and see how the politics are. Is there a lot of politics, or is there not? Is it a bigger class or a smaller class? The smaller the class, maybe the more time you have with the instructor, which is what a lot of people think, but also maybe the more time that you could be under the microscope. Bigger class, you can kind of blend in. There's different things, but I would really suggest people try to get into the school and get out of the school as quickly as possible. Really, the reason you're there is to get the license, but you're going to get the education along the way. You're going to have to. There's no way you can get around understanding your anatomy. Benefit would be, hey, cherry on top, they have really good orthopedic professors. They have really good biomechanics professors if you want to work with athletes. Neuroscience, that would be another one. But the unfortunate reality is, if you're going into PT school, generally the way PT school is looked at is you're going in, you don't have any sort of contingency plan in their mind, and you're there. You have to meet certain standards and hit certain marks. And a lot of times those standards and marks are just to make sure that you are professional and able to be a practicing part of the profession. It's less so about what you know, and it's more so about how you behave, or how you behave per their standards. So you have to understand that. What I will say about physical therapy school is it gives you a fantastic base of orthopedics and anatomy and physiology that you can then utilize with your athletes. Now, it takes a lot of time, it's going to cost money, but it's going to give you an increased scope of practice. So if you're looking at PT schools, And we have individuals who work for us and who we come in contact with. I do continuing education courses and come into contact with therapists who've gone to all different schools. And I think most of them would agree with a lot of what I've said here, which is you really want to look at how long is the length of stay in the program, but you also want to look at what are you going to get out of it. And I think with PT, you expand your scope. I can work with people with manual therapy. I can prescribe exercise. I can see people who are injured. But I also have the ability to go in and make money right away in a field where, I can kind of choose my path. And maybe you get in there and you say, you know what, I want to be able to make, a little more money, but I also want to do it in a different scene, and I'm going to go and work, part-time in this other capacity because the scope is larger. I would say physical therapy gives you one of the best scopes as far as that. Beyond that would be probably just a DO or an MD would give you a larger scope. As far as scope of practice, massage therapists, athletic trainers, and chiropractors don't necessarily have the same scope or the same breadth of practice that PTs have. Athletic trainers can do a little bit that PTs can't, in that they can provide on-field application of sports medicine, which is something that in a lot of states PTs aren't licensed to do. In some states they are. So there's different things. Where do you want to be is the main question you need to ask yourself. And then if you decide that, hey, I do want to go to physical therapy school, things to consider is how long am I going to be in PT school? How long am I in there per week or per day? What are the politics like? What am I going to get out of it in terms of education? And then what is it going to give me towards that initial question of where do I want to be? I think for what I do, it gives me a fantastic knowledge base and also the ability to access more athletes, to access the injured athletes, to access the athletes who just came out of surgery and are in a surgical protocol. And I understand injury processes and tissue healing timeframes and these different things. And I also have the scope to say, hey, I can do some manual therapy. I can do a mobilization on this individual. I can do a manipulation on this individual. I can do X, Y, or Z that maybe I couldn't do if I just had a master's degree in exercise science or biomechanics or whatever. But I've also seen individuals who said, you know what, I'm going to do chiropractic or I'm going to do massage therapy and I'm going to pursue it in this way and I'm going to have this avenue. It really depends on what you want to do. And I would say if the goal is to work with athletes across the spectrum of healthy and injured, I think that PT will give you the best ability to do that. But then again, some people want to work in a very specific niche. And I have an individual who I know very well who says, you know what, I don't really want to do the manual therapy. I don't want to stretch shoulders. I don't want to do any manipulations. I just want to work on the movement aspect, or I just want to work on the exercise aspect. And that's a totally different thing. And you got to think a little more in depth. But if you want to be able to do manual therapy, access injured athletes, see athletes on the field, all of those things you have to consider where you're at and what you're able to do and what licenses, certifications allow you to do those things. I think PT will give you the biggest scope and the most access to athletes, but the question is it worth it for you? And do you really need that? That's what I have. If you're looking into PT schools, I suggest you think about those things.